Let's bring in Jonathan Turley, constitutional attorney and Fox News contributor, and Kerri Urbahn, Fox News legal editor. Great to have both of you with us. You're hearing what's going on in there. Jonathan, let me start with you. What's your reaction to this back and forth?
Well, to say that tensions are high is an understatement. You know, the problem here is that the Trump administration has some good arguments, but it shouldn't overplay its hand. For example, they're arguing that this is what's called non-justiciable, that simply the court doesn't have a role here. That may be an argument that will sway some judges, but it's not an argument that allows you to ignore court orders. And so they have to be very careful here to make those arguments on appeal, not to treat them as a dead letter because you don't recognize the authority. Now, having said that, a lot of these judges have, in my view, exceeded their authority, including the imposition of national injunctions. And on that, I think that the Trump administration has a winning case to make. Various Supreme Court justices, including Justice Kagan, have objected to these district court judges issuing these national injunctions. So I think that there's good arguments here, but there also has to be some care. Part of the problem the Trump administration had the first term is a lack of discrimination on targets. They have to be careful on what they want to fight on and what they want to yield on.
Kerri, obviously we're waiting to see if they try to invoke this state secrets. One of the central issues here, as I understand it, is whether or not there was a tie. So if you're going to use this Alien Enemies Act from 1798, you have to prove that there's some sort of invasion from another country, and you have to prove that it's tied to the government of that other country. Now we've had very strong suggestion from the president and others related to this that they believe that Maduro controls TDA to some extent and that he wants them to destabilize the country. Do they need to prove that, or did they make a mistake in evicting these people in this manner and then having to prove that?
Well, DOJ has been arguing that Tren de Aragua is effectively a front for the Maduro regime. Right. And one of the things they point to is that in Venezuela, when Tren de Aragua is in a particular area, they effectively set up a quasi-government over the territory. And so they point to that and say, look, this gang is ruling a lot of Venezuela. And then, of course, in 2022, when Joe Biden was effectively ignoring our border laws and the like, they came pouring over, and we've seen the effects of that. You know, I will say this, Martha, about the state secrets doctrine, and on that, the judge gave the Department of Justice a Tuesday deadline as to whether they're going to actually invoke that or not. They're going to have to file a declaration as if they're going to do that. You have to remember that State Department official, a career guy who's been at the State Department since 1971, he filed his own declaration last weekend. And he said that what we saw over the weekend with these planes was the result of weeks of sensitive negotiations between top State Department officials, including Secretary of State Rubio, with the governments of El Salvador and Venezuela. And that's not something this judge was a part of, nor would he have access to. So part of me wonders about those conversations they were having with those governments, and if they are using that in part to suggest they may, in fact, invoke this doctrine so they don't have to reveal everything the judge wants them to. Now, of course, he thinks it's a pretext. He says, just answer my questions about the timing. But it's certainly an interesting situation to keep watching.
Yeah, just on the broader strokes here, Jonathan, I think that most Americans look at this and they don't understand why we would want to keep gang members like this in the country. Certainly, the president has said that. Why would anyone want to keep these people out if they're dangerous to the country, or to bring them back if they are dangerous to the country?
No, that's obviously a concern for many Americans. The fact is that we can get these individuals out of the country. I think that the Trump administration will ultimately prevail on most of these efforts at deportation. The only question is the manner in which it occurs. And the issue with state secrets is an example of that, and how you approach this. I've litigated state secrets cases from the other side from the government. And this is an argument that the government tends not to make in court, because the state secrets privilege or doctrine is so important to them. They don't want to risk it. There's a lot of debate on the edges of how far it extends, what you need, whether you need a cabinet level official to issue these declarations. I'm not too sure the prize is worth the powder here to put the state secrets doctrine at risk. So this is one of the issues that I'm concerned about in how this is unfolding. There's always a danger of doubling down on bad hands. Ultimately, the Trump administration will win this game in terms of deportations. This is well within Article 2 authority. I think the president is correct. I think that many judges have overstepped their bounds, but they have to be careful here, not to put things at risk that they don't have to put at risk in court.
Yeah. So, Kerri, the argument is that there are other ways that they could have removed them that would have saved them this headache with the courts. But you brought up earlier today a similar confrontation between Bill Barr the first time he was Attorney General. This was under George W. Bush with the boat people. Bush wanted to protect the country essentially from this invasion, whatever. I don't know if he used that word at the time of Haitian boat people. How did that work out? And is there a lesson in that for this today?
Well, there's some comfort to be taken from that, right? There's nothing new under the sun. These have been issues that have been playing out for years. But yes, then Attorney General Bill Barr, I believe he had 3 stays issued against the Department of Justice as they were trying to find a way for these boat people to not enter the country illegally via these boats. And ultimately, he won at the Supreme Court. And so we'll see what happens here.
I'm going to jump in. Kerri, Jonathan, thank you.